They left me for dead, called me a disgrace, told me I was nothing, until they showed up begging for my stem cells to save the very brother they chose over me. My name is Nathan. And the night they threw me out of the house, it was raining so hard I could barely see the road. My mother stood behind the window like a statue, refusing to look at me. My father held the door open with one hand and pointed with the other. "You don't belong here," he said. "You're a disgrace to this family." I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I picked up the torn bag they let me pack and walked into the dark without looking back. I was 17, and I knew then I was alone. My brother Jacob stayed inside. He didn't fight for me, didn't ask why. He just watched from the stairs as if I deserved it. And maybe back then I believed I did. Jacob was perfect in their eyes. Top grades, big smile, charming and obedient. He could set the house on fire and they'd find a way to blame me for handing him the match. Me. I was the mistake. The angry one. The one they were ashamed of. They said I was jealous. That I hated him. That I was trying to ruin everything. But the truth is, I loved him. Even after they made me the enemy. I spent the next 10 years scraping pieces of my life together. Homeless shelters. Night shifts. Couch to couch. I worked harder than anyone I knew, just to afford silence. No birthday calls. No family visits. Just enough peace to survive. Then, out of nowhere, a letter showed up. No return address. Just my name. Inside, 11 words that stopped my world cold. Jacob is dying. You're the only match. Please come back. They hadn't called me when I was starving. They hadn't reached out when I almost died from pneumonia in a bus station 2 winters ago. But now, they needed my cells. No apology. No explanation. Just please come back. I should have thrown the letter away. But I didn't. I told myself it was for Jacob. For the boy I once shared a room with. For the brother who used to draw little cartoons to make me laugh when our parents were screaming downstairs. But when I saw him in that hospital bed, my breath caught in my throat. He looked hollow, pale, tubes everywhere. And when he saw me, he cried. "Nathan," he whispered. "I didn't know. I thought you left us." He didn't know they threw me out. He thought I ran away. "I waited," he said, "for years. I waited for you to come back." That moment shattered me. I agreed to the transplant. It wasn't even a question. I did it for him, not them. After the procedure, they offered to let me stay at the house during recovery. I hesitated, but Jacob insisted. I wanted to believe things had changed. That maybe, just maybe, they'd seen what I did for him and finally saw me as part of the family. I was wrong. Late one night, walking down the hall for a glass of water, I heard my parents' voices through the bedroom door. "At least he's finally good for something," my mother said. Then came my father's voice. Cold, dismissive. "We should have never let him back in." The glass fell from my hand and shattered at my feet. But I didn't move. I had given them my stem cells, risked my life, and still, I was just a tool. A mistake they regretted. Something to be used and discarded. I left that night. Didn't say a word. But 2 days later, Jacob found me. He was pale, shaking, holding a file in his hands. "You're not just my brother," he said. "You're my twin." I thought he was joking, but then I saw the files. Hospital records. A letter from the delivery doctor. Birth certificates. 2 babies, born minutes apart. Me and Jacob. When we were born, I had complications. They were told I might not survive. So they made a decision. They took the healthy child, Jacob, and raised him like a prince. They sent me away. Quietly. Secretly. Left me with distant relatives until I was old enough to bring back and blend in as the troubled second son. They never told Jacob. Never told me. I was never supposed to know. They raised their golden boy in the light. And when they couldn't hide me anymore, they brought me back like a stain they had to cover. Not out of love, but out of fear someone would find out. They buried the truth for 17 years. And when I finally found my place in the world, they only came to find me. Because they needed something. Not a son. Just a match. I stared at the documents in my brother's hand, my heart thudding so hard I couldn't hear the room around me. Twin. Not younger brother. Not second son. Twin. I didn't know what to say. My name was on the birth records, the hospital files. 2 babies born minutes apart. One healthy, one weak. Me. The letter from the doctor confirmed everything. My mother had made the decision. She didn't want to raise a sick child. Didn't want the burden. So they sent me away. Not to protect me, but to forget me. And when I was brought back at age 5, they introduced me as the second son. Not a word about being twins. Not a word about what they had done. They kept that lie buried for over 20 years. And now they wanted me to bleed for it. Jacob dropped into the chair beside me. He was crying. They told me I was their only son for years. I don't even remember you coming into the house. I thought you were a cousin at first. It all made sense. The strange way they treated me. The absence of baby pictures. The moments I was blamed for things I didn't even know had happened. The silence during birthdays. The empty stares. The disappointment that didn't match my crimes. I was never part of the plan. I was a shadow they couldn't erase. That night, Jacob confronted them. I wasn't there, but I got the full story the next morning. He asked them why they lied, why they hid me, why they had destroyed our bond before it ever had a chance to grow. Their response? We did what we had to do, his mother said. You were meant for great things. He wasn't. She didn't even say my name. My father sat in the corner, silent, cold, just like the night he threw me out. He had always been the wall, unmoving, unforgiving. Jacob told me he yelled, cried, said he wished he could trade places with me. But he didn't understand. He got their love for free. I spent my life begging for scraps of it, only to realize it was never mine to have. 2 days later, I got a message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. Don't destroy this family, Nathan. Stay gone. I knew it was them. They weren't afraid I'd run. They were afraid I'd speak. That I'd ruin the image they built. The perfect family, the brilliant son, the loving parents. They didn't want the world to know what they had done. That they had buried a child alive and only dug him up when they needed to drain his marrow. But they were too late. Because Jacob had already told his fiancée. And she was furious. She worked in media. And she offered to tell my story. To expose the truth. To break them the way they had broken me. I said no. Not because they didn't deserve it, but because I knew that silence would haunt them more. Because from now on, every smile they faked in public would carry the fear that one day, I'd speak, and they wouldn't know when, or how. The last time I saw them was at Jacob's follow-up appointment. He was stronger, healing, alive. I stood in the hallway as my parents walked past. My mother looked at me, her eyes sharp, jaw clenched. My father didn't even blink. And Jacob, he turned to them and said, loud enough for the hallway to hear, you owe him everything, and you'll never deserve him. He didn't look back, and neither did I. Jacob didn't go home with them that day. He asked if he could stay with me for a few days, said he needed space, time to think. I said yes, but honestly, I was still processing everything myself. We barely spoke that first night. He just sat there on the old couch in my apartment, holding the file with our birth records like it might disappear if he let it go. I didn't ask questions. I didn't know where to start. All I knew was, for the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. Not to him. The next morning, I found him in my kitchen, staring at a faded photo I kept taped to the fridge. It was the only picture I had from childhood, a blurry shot of me with a woman whose face I couldn't remember. I was maybe 3. She was holding my hand, and smiling. Jacob pointed to the photo. That's not Mom, he said quietly. I nodded. I know. I had always assumed the woman was a relative, a kind stranger, someone who took care of me before they brought me back into the family. But Jacob looked uneasy. "You said they left you with relatives when you were born," he said. I nodded again. He hesitated. "Nathan, what if they didn't?" That question felt like a match dropped on gasoline. We started digging. Old medical files, school records, anything we could get our hands on. And what we found made my skin crawl. There were no adoption papers, no legal guardianship forms, no trace of me being formally placed in someone else's care. There was just a gap. 2 years of my life, erased. And then, tucked inside a sealed envelope buried in Jacob's father's locked study drawer, a photo of the same woman from my fridge. But this time, she was pregnant. On the back, written in my father's handwriting, "Keep this hidden. He can never know." Jacob and I looked at each other, both of us breathing hard. Something was wrong. Something was missing. I scanned the envelope again, and I saw it. A second piece of paper. Yellowed. Fragile. It was a birth registration. But not mine. It had my birthday. My birth hospital. But not my parents' names. The mother's name was the woman in the photo. Her name was Clara. And next to father, it was blank. My chest tightened. My mouth went dry. Jacob whispered, "Nathan, she wasn't just someone who raised you. She was your mother." Everything blurred. I wasn't their son. Not by blood. Not even by mistake. I was never the unwanted twin. I wasn't their twin at all. The name Clara wouldn't leave my mind. I had never heard anyone in the family mention her, not even in passing. But there she was, pregnant, smiling, holding my hand in that old photo like I was her whole world. She wasn't a caretaker. She wasn't some distant relative. She was my mother. And the fact that her name had been buried in a sealed envelope, hidden in a locked drawer, inside a house that was never meant to be mine, made everything worse. Jacob sat in silence as I read the old birth registration again. There was no father's name, no address, just Clara's signature. A single name, but it carried more weight than anything my so-called parents had ever said to me. Jacob hesitated, then finally asked the question we were both thinking. "Do you think Dad is your father?" I couldn't answer, because deep down, I already knew. We started digging again. But this time, it was Jacob who helped me unlock what our father never thought anyone would see, his old email archives. It didn't take long. Dozens of messages between him and Clara. Some dated back over 20 years. Some much more recent. And what they revealed shattered me. My father had been having an affair with Clara, a nurse who once worked at his hospital. The affair began before Jacob was born. It was supposed to end. But then, Clara got pregnant. With me. He panicked. Told her it was over. Begged her to terminate the pregnancy. She refused. She told him she didn't want anything from him. She said she would raise the child on her own. But when I was born, and there were complications, she reached out again. Desperate. Scared. Pleading for help. And he never replied. For months, she sent letters. Photos. Medical records. Please. And then one day, she stopped. That's when my mother found out. And what happened next was worse than I ever imagined. There was one final email, dated 15 years ago, from Clara. It was short, only a few lines. "I gave him back to you, like you wanted. I can't fight anymore. But I kept the birth certificate. I kept the truth. Someday he'll find it, and when he does, I hope he burns every lie you ever told." That was the last email in the thread. No reply. No closure. No mention of where Clara went. No records of her since. Jacob and I sat there in silence. The father he thought he knew. The mother I never got to remember. The truth we were never meant to find. "Nathan," Jacob whispered, his voice cracking. "They didn't just hide you. They destroyed her. To erase you. And just like that, the pieces clicked. I wasn't just forgotten. I was buried. Not because I was troubled. Not because I didn't belong. But because my face carried the truth they couldn't hide. The face of his betrayal. The living proof of his affair. All those years, they made me believe we were from the same parents, I said, my voice low. All my life, I thought we were just different. But still brothers. Twins. Jacob stared at me, stunned. They forged the documents, Jacob. I continued. The birth certificates, the hospital files. All fake. They wanted the story to look clean. 2 boys. Born minutes apart. Same parents. Same last name. No questions. I held up the real birth registration from Clara's box. But this is the truth. I was never your twin. I wasn't even their son. Not hers. Just his. I was the threat. The mistake. The scandal they tried to erase. And they almost did. Jacob didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. We kept rereading Clara's last message. Her words haunted me. I gave him back to you. I kept the truth. What did that mean? Gave me back. When? How? And why hadn't she stayed in my life? Why hadn't she fought harder? Or worse, what if she had? The next morning, we dug deeper. Not through our father's files. We knew those were scrubbed. We looked into hospital records. Old employee logs. Public registries. Clara had worked at the hospital for 7 years. Then suddenly, nothing. Her employment ended without a transfer. No promotion. No leave. No retirement notice. Just one line in the file. Resigned. Personal reasons. Jacob made a call. A friend in HR owed him a favor. An hour later, Jacob looked up from the screen and went still. Nathan. She didn't resign. She was forced out. There was an internal complaint, filed by Mom. My stomach turned. The file stated that my mother, Jacob's mother, had accused Clara of inappropriate behavior and boundary violations with a senior physician. She claimed Clara made unwanted advances toward her husband. It was a cover-up. They didn't just want Clara gone from his life. They wanted her erased. From the hospital, from the city, from the record. And then, we found it. Her last known address. An apartment complex across town. Old, run down, nearly forgotten. We drove there. My hands were shaking the whole way. The building manager was an old man with a missing tooth and a cigarette hanging from his mouth. When we asked about Clara, he squinted at me and said, "You look like her." I froze. "She lived here for years," he said. "Quiet woman. Used to wait by the mailbox every day. Like she was expecting something." I asked him where she was now. He shook his head. "Gone. Couple years now. Died in that apartment. No family claimed the body. City buried her." Something inside me cracked. I asked if we could see the room. He handed us the key. The apartment was still. Dusty, but untouched. It looked like no one had stepped inside since the day she died. No photos. No decorations. Just one small wooden box sitting on the windowsill. Inside were letters. All of them addressed to me. None of them sent. She had written to me every birthday. Every single one. She wrote about her favorite color. About the food I liked as a baby. About how she still saw my face every time it rained. She never gave up on me. She was just silenced before her words could reach me. And at the very bottom of the box was the real bombshell. A cassette tape, labeled simply, "For Nathan, if they ever let you remember." We found a player. Sat on the dusty floor. Pressed play. Her voice came through, soft, shaking, tired. "Nathan, if you're hearing this, it means you've learned the truth. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to tell you in person. I tried. For years I tried. They took you from me. I begged them. I pleaded. But he, your father, he said if I didn't walk away, he'd ruin my life. And he did. He told me no one would believe me. And they didn't. I lost my job, my reputation, my home. But I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. If I'm gone by the time you hear this, know this. They didn't just steal you. They stole everything I ever had. You were never a mistake. You were never the shame. You were the best thing I ever did. And I am so proud of you. The tape clicked off. And I sat there, silent, still, shattered. I always wondered who the woman in the photo was, the one taped to my fridge, holding my hand when I was barely old enough to walk. I used to tell myself she was a kind neighbor, or maybe a distant aunt. But now I know. She was my mother, Clara. They took me from her when I was 3, and told the world I was theirs. They forged a second birth certificate, labeled me a twin, erased her name, and turned her love into a lie. I didn't know her, but somewhere deep in me, I did. I always did. I didn't cry right away. Not at first. I sat in Clara's empty apartment. The place where she waited for letters that never came. Where she wrote words that were never delivered. Where she whispered into silence hoping I'd one day hear her. And finally I did. But she was gone. Jacob tried to comfort me, but what I felt wasn't grief. Grief is when someone is taken from you. This was theft. They didn't just take her from me. They convinced the world she never existed. They turned her love into shame, her son into a secret, her memory into a locked drawer in a study no one ever opened. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to post her story online, or show up on their doorstep with cameras. No. They buried Clara in silence. So silence would be the weapon. I went home and made copies of the tape. 6 of them. Then I wrote a short letter, not to expose them, but to remind them. Just 12 words. This is what you tried to erase. But I remember her. I mailed one to my father, one to my mother, one to each of my aunts and uncles who never asked why I disappeared, one to the church elder who used to praise our godly family, and one to the hospital board that once employed them both. They wouldn't be able to unhear her voice. Not now. Not ever. Jacob wanted to confront them in person. I told him not to. He didn't need to fight for me anymore. He had already done the one thing they never did. Stood beside me when it mattered. He moved out of their house for good. Said he couldn't breathe in a home built on that much rot. A few weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten. No name. Just 5 words. We never deserved your silence. I burned it without opening it. Because they were right. They never deserved anything from me. Not my blood. Not my pain. And not my forgiveness. But I kept the tape. The one she made for me. I play it sometimes. When I forget who I am. Not because I need the reminder. But because her voice deserves to be heard. Even if it's only by me. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories.